I can become someone that no one thinks I can be. And just me talking about that, I have the hair going up on my arms because it makes me just like, what if? They don't know me, son. Get it. 18. They don't know me, son. Get it. 19. They don't know me, son. Who's gonna carry the boats and the logs? Who's one more to carry the boats? Who's gonna carry the fucking boats? I want you to think about me, knowing that I'm comfortable, being very unfucking comfortable. Who's gonna carry the fucking boat? It comes from a disgusting place of afraid of dying, having never accomplished anything.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the War Within podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's a co-founder and CEO of Sidekicks. He's the VP of sales. He owns the Apex Marketing Group. He's the founder of the Street Leadership Channel. He also is a John Maxwell Leadership Certified team member since 2016 and an active Tony Robinson Platinum partner since 2023. Last but not least, he's also a husband and a father of 3. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Goodman.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me on the show.
Man, I appreciate you coming, man. We almost should have got the workout on there before this and the steaks.
That's it, man. Yeah, it was great.
I mean, this is, at first it was almost like I was going out on a date before he came over here. I'm not joking. I was telling my my old lady and Mike, because I'm like, man, I don't even know this guy. You just kind of, somebody recommends you to come on here, and then I called you the other morning. Well, I was trying to put you in my phone is what I was trying to do, and it was early in the morning, and then you called me back, and then we got a short conversation, and then I'm like, it seemed like I figured you was like a busy dude, but then I was wondering, because I didn't hear from you for a while, and I'm like, maybe he's kind of like, I don't know if I want to go on this deal or whatnot, but man, I'm glad you came, and just us talking off camera, just the conversation and the genuineness and the path of where you are, where you came from. Everybody in this room, me and Mike and you, I mean, with same deal, same story, you know what I mean? Just different walks. But I mean, essentially me and you are on the same spaceship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I knew it, kind of in our first messages back and forth, it's not every day you run into somebody who's got a sauna and a cold plunge, working out before the podcast, kind of carnivore style diet. And I was like, yeah, man, we're cut from the same cloth. So appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to be able to come in and spend this time.
No, I mean, really, man, this is you, man. This is the reason that people that complain all the time, all the people that think that, they're different than everybody else and their story and situation is different. It's people like me and you. It's people that I want to have on this show that, I want people to understand that, look, you have the opportunity to do whatever it is that you want to do if you proceed to take the right steps and put in the discipline, you know what I mean, to obtain these things. There's a reason why people are trying to flock to this country, and it's not because it's not a great country. It's because they want the freedom and to be able to do things that you can do in this country. I'm not saying that there ain't other countries out there that, you couldn't essentially do some stuff, but there's a reason why people are trying to come over here and get a slice of freedom and the opportunity to do what it is that they want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You look around, there's a lot of people from a lot of other countries that are way more successful than a lot of Americans, because they have the drive, because they don't have the complacency, and because they want to excel, because they've already came for shit. You know what I mean? They came from nothing, and I mean, I guess it's kind of the same story in a way. I mean, drugs, alcohol, whatever your story is. I mean, it just being at the bottom and working your way to the top, but gaining that the concept that what you make important, you will do. You know what I mean? And what you don't, you won't do. I mean, that's just what it is. It's that day-to-day idea of, do I press the snooze button and go back to sleep? What is it going to accomplish? It ain't really going to accomplish shit, probably make me feel like shit because I told myself the day before, hey, look, I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. So every time that I don't get up at 4 a.m., it bothers me,
Yeah, they say that self-confidence comes from keeping your promises and your commitments to yourself, and so every day you have the opportunity to either kind of reinforce that self-confidence by keeping your word, or you're slowly chipping away at it by, being lazy, not doing what you said you were going to do. Sleeping in when you said you were going to wake up, skipping the gym when you said you were going to work out. You just gotta
only doing 200 reps of triceps with the bands whenever I said 300.
Yeah, I don't know, 200 still felt pretty extreme, but all of those things, man. And I really resonated even just with the name, the war within. I mean, because we all have our own demons and battles that we're fighting, and like you said, we all come from our own backgrounds and mistakes. And Tony Robbins is one of my mentors, and he's famous for saying that your past doesn't determine your future, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what struggles, what adversity you may have gone through in your life, what's happened to you. You have the opportunity to make different decisions today that can set you on a totally different trajectory.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of these deals where it's not easy, you know what I mean? But it gets easier the more that you do it, is what I think that people need to grasp. There is nothing. Look, there's very few people that have found a niche and made it up here really quick. Majority of people, and you don't see this, a lot of people don't see it, and a lot of them same people sit back and they're like, oh, that guy, he's rich, he's able to do this, he's able to do that. But you don't see the fact that he missed the soccer games of his kids, everything that he sacrificed to get to that point. You know what I mean? The 20 years or whatever it is, because majority of people, their businesses crumble. They've lost everything. They just keep on trying again. You know what I mean? It's the consistency and the discipline to keep on going, no matter what the fuck happens, no matter how shitty you feel, making yourself, that's why this is what it is. It's the war within, because you are literally battling yourself. You aren't battling. I don't battle anybody else. You know what I mean? There's nobody that can harm me more than I harm myself mentally on a fucking daily basis. You know what I mean? There's nobody, so that's why, like, to me, I'm an open book, because you can't harm me. Nobody can, essentially, maybe physically, but not mentally,
Yeah.
Because I'll tell myself on a daily basis, like, look, you're not putting in enough. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how much I put in, I still will never be at that aspect of where I want to be. You know what I mean?
Always another level, man. And I remember hearing, not that long ago, but if you do what's easy, your life is going to be hard.
Yes.
But if you do what's hard, your life will be easy. And it's making those hard decisions, on a consistent basis over a period of time, that leads to a totally different life.
Yes. And knowing, though, that, look, sometimes I'm not going to get up at 4 a.m. Sometimes I am going to slack, but guess what? I'm going to fucking regroup. You know what I mean? I'm not going to keep on staying in that same rut. You have to pull yourself out of these fucking ruts, Actually, that's a good thing. Talk about how much you used to weigh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I was telling you a little bit earlier. So the most I was when I weighed myself, and this was after I'd already started working out, I was over 250 pounds, you know, and so now I'm about like 185. So it's been a significant.
And how long have you been hitting it consistently?
So I started in 2020 was really where I started to kind of work out, and it started with doing 10 minutes on the elliptical and just making a small shift 10 minutes turned into 15, turned into 20, turned into an hour on the elliptical, which, it kind of helped expedite the process of losing some weight, and then kind of transitioned into weightlifting. And, and it's been a journey. And like you said, man, there's always going to be ups and downs through, whenever you're trying to do something differently. And I think where most people struggle is when they do have those downs, or they fall off the wagon, or they make the mistake, and they go to war within themselves. They start beating themselves up. They start feeling consumed with guilt, and they just give up on it, rather than, just accepting, hey, I had a bad day today, and tomorrow's a new day, and I'm going to start fresh again.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Like, to me, what I've learned is I take that negativity in and I use it as fuel. You know what I mean? I get up at 4 a.m. because I know that every motherfucker is sleeping.
That's
you know
it.
what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of times I don't want to be up that early.
Yeah,
I would
nobody
love,
does. Yeah, nobody does,
I mean, even, it just like to me, like, I'm trying to do shit that other people aren't doing, because majority of people in this country are complacent. They are fucking miserable, whether they'll say it or not. You know what I mean? A lot of people are miserable. You know what I mean? And a lot of people will stay miserable because they are not willing to do things differently or try to go against the norm or their self. You know what I mean? There's a reason why there are very few extremely successful people. There's a reason why there's very few billionaires. Not a lot of millionaires neither. Whenever you break down the population to millionaires, there's not a lot, because these people essentially, some of them have gotten a silver spoon probably here and there, but majority of these people have put in the work to get where it is, and they kept on staying consistent. And I think one of the most important things, especially with the fitness wise, even besides the business wise, but the fitness wise, is that, look, this is a lifestyle. It's like we were talking about with the diet. You know what I mean? You have to find something sustainable. You have to find something that you can hold on to, or, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym every single day and, put in an hour or 2 hours. Some days, as long as you get in 15 minutes or a fucking walk, some days, like, I just throw on a weighted vest. I got a weighted vest out there and I walk around my neighborhood for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? I'm doing something,
Something is absolutely better than nothing, man. And it kind of ties into it, is that if you will do what other people won't do, you can have what other people can't have, right? And so just being willing to do what other people aren't is what's going to lead you to the results that most people want. Is everybody knows what it takes to be successful. Everybody knows what it takes to be fit and healthy. It's not like this mystery of like only the select
elite,
few know what it takes to be fit and healthy, but when it comes to actually doing the work, it's like, oh man, I'm just not willing to do it,
Yes.
But if you're willing to show up and go to the gym or work out or go
to
a walk.
Tony Robinson's deals, go to see these business building things that you essentially do. I mean, there's a reason why you have all this stuff going on, and it's not just because of essentially just you putting in the work. You're also attending these other events where you're learning from other people that are already on that level, or that it's surrounding yourself around them people. It's surrounding yourself with, whether it's a podcast or whatever it is, a saying, like I was saying, you know what I mean? Like, all of them are just aspects of growing, very, just in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to grow. I mean, ultimately, as a person, obviously exercise is huge. It builds confidence. You know what I mean? Eating is huge. The better your health is, the better you're going to be, the better you're going to think, the more you're going to want to do stuff. You ain't got no fucking energy. A lot of people are eating shit food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Their kids, it's easier to feed your kids because they get tired of listening to their kids complain or bitch. So instead, they'll just give them, whatever it is that they want,
Or some McDonald's,
exactly,
off DoorDash.
Exactly. It's easy. That's what I'm saying. Like, I listen to David Goggins all the time, and he always talks about it. It's very easy in this culture to look like you're really like something, because so many people aren't doing anything. You know what I mean? And they're choosing the easy way instead of going the hard way, when, like you said earlier, the easy way is actually way more complicated, way worse, because you end up feeling like crap and, essentially battling your own conscience over stuff and end up with health issues and everything else. And you're not excelling, like just in general with what you got on your phone, you got all your goals. I mean, that's a powerful thing. I don't even write them down, but I should, that's another step. I mean, what are you working towards? Because if you ain't working towards anything, then there's nothing for you to do. Like,
I think a lot of people, really struggle with that. There was a great book I read. It's called Outwitting the Devil, by Napoleon Hill. And he talks about most people are just drifting through life, and they don't really have like a clear purpose or a clear mission of what it is that they're driving towards. And most people don't take the time to like really sit down with themselves and ask themselves those deep questions of like, what do I really want? What do I really want to achieve? What am I working towards this year? And people kind of settle for the life that they're given rather than realizing that they have the power to be able to create the life that they want. And so when you get really crystal clear on what it is that you're going after and you give yourself that target, when you're locked in, it's like, okay, am I in alignment with what I said I wanted to do? Whether it's the health goals or business, and it keeps you moving in that direction rather than getting distracted by everything else, that you're going to run through on a daily basis. So.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely, exactly. Let's go into some of your background and where you came from and how you got to the point that you are at, and kind of, obviously, but before the end of the podcast, we'll have you explain out some of your business and throw it out there and ways people find you. But explain your story, man, because you know what I mean. We kind of have the same story in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I grew up by Chicago, northwest suburbs, Palatine, Illinois. Didn't necessarily have the didn't have like a rough upbringing, didn't have like the greatest. Both of my parents kind of struggled with substance abuse issues. And so I grew up around, drinking and smoking pot on a daily basis. And so that was really normal for me. Kind of grew up in that environment, went to college at Western Illinois University. I had it in my mind that I was going to be a law enforcement agent. And during that time, that was when I got my first sales job, was selling pot. I kind of had an entrepreneur mindset, at a pretty young age, and had some big goals and aspirations, and I'll never forget, they ended up raiding my house in college, and one of my friends was at I actually got away. It's kind of a crazy story, which I won't get into on this, but I wasn't there when they raided the house, and so I was on the run for a couple of days, and one of my buddies went to my bond hearing, and they were like, we'd like to issue out a warrant for the alleged mastermind behind McDonough County's marijuana distribution, Ryan Goldman. And, so it got into trouble, with that. And, so I was about 20 years old, 19, 20 years old at that time. Same time, my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and basically passed away. And so, at that point in my life, I was at a really broken, just really rough spot. My dad just died. I just got kicked out of college, just had my house get raided, so I'm facing felony drug charges, and really felt like I had totally messed up my life at this point. So I came back from Western, and I was back in Palatine, and I was working at a movie theater, scooping popcorn. And they had told me that I couldn't even get promoted to be an assistant manager at a movie theater. And so I remember being at this crossroads in my life, like, man, what am I going to do? And I had a friend of mine who, her dad was the director of building and grounds for a school district. And so he knew who I was, he knew my character, and knew my work ethic. And so he gave me an opportunity, which was really a huge blessing in my life at that time. And I was mowing lawns, pulling weeds, cutting down trees, doing just straight manual labor, and I was not the biggest fan of it. But I was like, hey, I don't really have many options, and so I'm going to do whatever I can. And the season was coming to an end and I was applying to be a custodian. And I remember like resolving inside of myself that like I could become a custodian. I can maybe work my way up to being a head custodian one day. I'll be able to have like the school holidays and some benefits. And I really thought that that's what my life was going to be. And while I was interviewing for the custodian position, this girl that I had met at a previous job that I didn't get hired for because of my background had told me about an opportunity to work for a door-to-door energy sales company. And I was like, look, I'll give it a shot. I'll come in. And was very kind of like transparent about my background, and they were willing to hire me. And so I got started in door-to-door sales, 13 years ago, and I ended up being really, really successful at it. And I'll never forget. My second week paycheck was like $1,900. It was commission only, and my first year in the business, I made $80,000. My second year was $111,000, and so I was 24 years old. With a
lot of
felony,
money,
felony on my background, got kicked out of college, but I was doing better than pretty much everybody I knew, and felt like I had kind of made it, I mean, to be earning a six-figure income. But the challenge with that is, you give a young 20-year-old with, I didn't have, a father figure to really guide me. My mom was, dealing with her own substance abuse issues from my dad dying. And so it, that income really turned into like partying, and so I actually started to kind of develop like an alcohol addiction, which eventually led to, a cocaine addiction. And, I was in a relationship, got her pregnant. We had 2 children together, and, I was prioritizing partying. That was like, my main thing while, kind of still running my business. And it led to a really, really nasty breakup, and through that nasty breakup, I ended up losing my kids got taken from me, and she had kind of her own issues. And so she ended up having the kids get taken by DCFS. And so my kids got put into foster care. And so here I am on this one hand, like successful businessman earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But on the other hand, my life is in shambles. My kids are taken away, and my kids are in foster care, and so that had led me to like a really kind of a really devastating kind of point in my life. And for anybody who's kind of maybe in active addiction, we try to beat the system rather than, taking accountability. And so that's what I thought I could do. I thought I could, kind of manipulate my way through and somehow, win custody of my kids. And so I was going through this court case of trying to get my kids out of foster care for like a year, and literally made like absolutely no progress. And, it was just like a really, really hard situation to go through, of being like told you can only see your kids for 1 hour a week supervised. And it got to the point where like I just felt like so beaten and broken down. And we had kind of like this family meeting, so to speak, with my ex and her parents and the guardian or the foster parents of the kids, and they had really tried to push me to sign guardianship of my kids to my ex's parents. And at that time, it seemed like that maybe that was the best decision, to be able to get them out of the foster care system,
Right.
and get them into that. And so I agreed to it. But that kind of like set me off the deep end, of like just total defeat and self-pity,
How old were your
self-loathing.
kids at this time?
They were like 1 and 2, one and 2, or
Man.
2 and 3. So real,
Holy cow! Really, really young too.
yeah.
So what? I guess because I know whenever they came and got me and my sister, they took us to a group home first.
So I actually got really, really lucky in the fact that they were placed with family friends.
Okay.
So they were not necessarily in like the traditional foster care system at first.
Yeah.
So they got placed with people that they knew, that, we both knew, that really loved our kids. And so that was a huge, huge blessing in that situation of, not wondering like, okay, where are they? Are they in like a safe environment or anything like that? And, Yeah, eventually, like I said, I just really self-destructed at that point, and shortly after that, I had gone out to I think it was the Oz or one of the clubs, and
So you was already down here then.
Yeah, I was down here.
Okay.
It was one of the clubs, and I
over by Pops.
yeah,
Oz,
It was the Oz. Then. Yeah. It wasn't Pops. It was the Oz. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Yeah.
So not a place that I should have been,
Right.
if you've ever been there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a story about the Oz real quick, not to cut you off, but so I was messing around with this chick. Mike remembers this. I was all in love with this girl, or like I was all pussy whipped and shit. Yeah, hey, look, I go down they invited me down the Oz. I go down the Oz and shit, and it's her and her friend and shit, and I'm there. They just got me down there, and then I started drinking and shit, and then they were just like blowing me off, I got pissed off. I threw my drink in the Oz. Look, like this is the Oz. There was like really nothing going on. I didn't have no driver's license at the time neither, and I was driving this Tahoe that I had. It was all blacked out on 22s and no license. The fucking the license plates were temp tags, like for years, like they were, and so I throw this fucking drink at the look. This is before like a whole bunch of people are in there, so it's just like them, and then they're like talking to these other guys and shit, and I'm just standing there on the side and shit, you know what I mean? They straight treated me, and then so I get fucking pissed. I fucking launch this fucking drink. Here comes the fucking bouncers like running after me, so I still go running for out the door, right? And as I going through the front door, I hit the parking block and I face plant. Boom, hey. And then all these people like, oh shit, hey, they're fucking laughing. Hey, look, the police fucking the bouncer grabs me, throws me up against the wall, got my hand behind my back. Look, there's like fucking 70 people. Everybody's laughing and cracking on me and shit. Look, then so I'm like, fuck, now I'm like, man, I'm gonna get arrested. I ain't got no driver's license. Here I go, this fucking vehicle and shit. And so the chief of police and the police get up there, and I'll never forget it because I'm like, fuck, I'm going to jail. Hey, the fucking chief of police, he's like, he's got my hands like this, and he's like, "That's just you fucking vehicle. Get the fuck out of here. I better not see you no more tonight." Hey, I jumped in that motherfucker driving without no license and fucking left.
That's it, man. Yeah. Dude, that's a blessing right there, you know. But yeah, it's one of those places, shouldn't be at, and I have no idea.
Especially in the situation that you like with what you had going on, you're already in a bad place.
Yeah, and at that point, I mean, I was drinking probably like a fifth of whiskey a night to myself. It was.
Hey, this is the thing though, like, man, so you're like, what you say, like 24 at that time?
So no, this was, I was like 28, 29 at this point, so this was a couple years later.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, it being in your kid's life, that had to be hard, especially, with her, you're in love with her. And then, cause like I told you, my situation is basically the same thing. I had a kid on the way at 16, was in love with a girl. Her dad basically was like, look, he ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. Like, you're going to your mom's, and sent her to her mom's. And, I was devastated, and same deal. I just went downhill from there. You know what I mean? Only difference is I ended up just keep on digging myself and then eventually going to prison. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the whole kid thing, like, I was a kid. I didn't grasp the concept of, like, it was like just cool to say that you had a kid, it kind of sounds crazy. It's just like a thing to do. Like, I got a kid, I'm a kid and I got a kid. It's cool. Like, people had kids, but like, I didn't grasp the concept of being a father or a parent or anything like that. And then prison, then it was just like, I just forgot about all that shit. Cause I just had to, didn't just figured out a way to cope. And the easiest way to cope was just do my fucking time and just leave everything behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was kind of like an identity crisis, because I had so many people that like looked up to me and respected me in business for like the impact that I had in their life, and like people who would, come to me and say like, I'd changed their life in such a positive way. But then I'm having, these other people tell me that I'm not even good enough to be able to spend more than an hour a week with my own children, And so like it created such like it created a war within myself.
Yes, being torn apart.
Yeah.
2 ways.
Yeah. And so luckily, I mean, it was powerful enough, to finally get me to change. And so that night that I went to the Oz, I don't know what happened. I came to consciousness in a hospital room covered in my own blood with no idea how I had gotten there. 5 staples in my head. And I came out of the hospital and the next day was when I was supposed to be signing guardianship of my kids away. And that was the lowest point I've ever been in my entire life. And I had finally surrendered, I'd given up. And I'll never forget going to bed that night and laying in bed, tossing and turning, and I had this spiritual experience where I felt like God came and spoke to me, and he said, everything in your life will get better if you just get better. And those words just went through my head over and over again all night long. And that next day was the day that I woke up and I decided I was going to get sober. And, so I didn't have my license at the time. I had gotten a DUI, and I took a Uber to an AA meeting, ready for me to be saved. And I'm at this AA meeting and nobody shows up. And I was like,
Nobody?
Nobody.
Really?
Nobody showed up. Not a single person.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, I thought this is, I'm
like
like,
a sign.
Yeah, you start to use these rationalizations.
Yes, easily.
And, luckily there's like a meeting every hour. So I went to another one, and I swear to God, nobody fucking showed up again.
What?
And I'm like, I'm literally having this conversation with myself, like, God, like I thought you wanted me to do this. And what I realize is there's a lesson in that, right? Is like, you're gonna be tested in life. When you make a decision that you want something else, like life is gonna test you to see how bad you really want it and how serious you are.
Job, I just say, if you know Job in the Bible, I just read all of Job. I mean, this is why, look, everything was thrown at Job, you know what I mean? And he still stood firm, and, but God let the devil throw everything at Job, boils, kill his whole family, his kids, everything. I mean, it's just, man, but that's crazy though.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps even talking about it. And, luckily, I had somebody's phone number, that I knew was in the program, and at that, like, instead of giving up, right, which is like, once again,
easy to justify.
I tried twice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what we do, right? We try something once, we try something twice. We don't get the results we want. All right, we're just going to revert back.
It's easier for you to go grab a drink.
100%. And justify it. I tried, but I didn't, and thank God. And and I called somebody that I knew was in the program, and they guided me to one of the meetings in Belleville, and there was 40 people at that one, and so I was
the same day.
Yeah. So it took 3 attempts that day, and I shared that story, when I was there, and it was, it was really, really powerful.
So where were the first 2 meetings at?
They were in downtown St. Louis.
No shit.
Yeah, downtown St. Louis, and it was kind of awkward times in the middle of the day.
Yeah. But usually, I mean, at least somebody would show up, like hosting the meeting. At least that's crazy.
It was.
That is crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, and like I said, I truly believe whenever you want something in life, gonna get tested. How bad do you really want it? You know, because everybody's interested in success, but few are committed.
Right.
And that's the fastest way you're going to weed out the people that are interested versus the people that are committed, is give them a little bit of adversity and see how they respond, and the people that are interested, they get a little bit of adversity. They're like, you know what? I'm not willing to go through this. I might want it, but I don't want it that bad. And they kind of give up on it. So yeah, that was my first day of sobriety. That was September 3rd, 2019. And, kind of a crazy, situation was like, I had it in my mind that like getting sober, everything in my life would get better. Right. And it was actually the exact opposite. Everything in my life got way harder and way more difficult. At that point I was like three months sober or so. And being off my ankle monitor, I'm like, all right, I had to be home at like 6:00 every night, and so I just like, I want to go out and have fun, so I decided that I was going to go out to Ballpark Village, which isn't necessarily the best place for a sober person to be going out. But I prayed to God, that was what they taught me in AA was, as long as you stay in a fit spiritual condition and you should be all right. And so I prayed, I was like, God, let me go out for a purpose. And that night I ran into this beautiful, beautiful woman who was from the Philippines, and her name was Stephanie. And she is actually now my wife, and so that situation, I don't believe I would have ever met her if I hadn't been put on house arrest and gone through that pain and that adversity. And so even though at the moment when I'm, sitting in jail, dealing with these charges and trying to figure out why is this happening to me?
Sober too.
Doing all the right things and realizing man, I was being guided. Right. And Tony Robbins says this too. He's like, life happens for you, not to, and realizing we might not necessarily know why we're going through what we're going through, but life is always happening for us, not to us, and it's guiding us to where we need to be. And so, luckily I met her at that point in time. And that was one of the greatest blessings of my life was meeting her. And so things were starting to finally go well. I was starting to be able to see my kids a little bit more. I was, working towards okay, maybe I'll be able to get longer visitation, more time, maybe get to overnights. And then March 2020 happened and COVID-19, and that shut down the entire court system. It shut down visitation with my kids. It shut down my business. And so here I was once again, now I'm 6 months sober. They shut down in-person AA meetings.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I've been doing all the right things, everything that I'm supposed to do. And then once again, life just smacks me in the face again.
Mm-hmm.
And, here I am, kind of faced with another crossroads of okay, am I going to let this be the reason to go backwards? Because now I don't get to see my kids at all.
Yeah.
I don't have the support. I was going to 3 AA meetings a day, just because that was what I needed, for myself. And to that was taken away. My business was now shut down, and so now I'm unemployed, which I hadn't had to go through in almost a decade at that point. I did 90 meetings in 30 days. That's the life of an addict, right? It's okay, they say 90 meetings in 90 days, and I'm like all in.
Whatever works.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And that was what I needed. I needed to go in the morning, in the afternoon, in the night. Because it was for me, it was relearning a new way of living. And actually, once again, I felt like I was guided through that because that was what gave me such a strong foundation that when the world shut down, I really haven't been to a meeting since, And so by the grace of God, I felt like I had a really strong foundation through that experience. And so I made a commitment to myself that regardless of what the world was going through, was that I was going to come out of COVID better than I went into it. And that was really when I started to work out. And so that was what I was telling you in 2020. So about 5 years ago, I was like, you know what, what's in my control at this point? It's not in my control, the courts. It's not in my control of, visitation. It's not in my control of, my business opening back up. But what can I focus on? I could focus on me. I could focus on my health. I could focus on, putting good things into my mind. And so that was really where I made a commitment to my health. I started reading a little bit more. And it was actually where I did my first Tony Robbins event. It was a virtual Unleash the Power Within that I got a Facebook ad for. And it was $300. And I had listened to his 30-day Personal Power 2 CD program like a decade ago. And, so I've always listened to motivational, stuff. And so I was familiar with Tony Robbins, and I was like, man, to have a 4-day event for $300, I'll do that. And that was the exact message that I needed to hear at that time was, life is happening for us, not to us. And really, being able to say, okay, I'm on the right path, even though life doesn't feel fair right now, I'm just going to keep kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And eventually, the courts opened up. Eventually the visitation, started again. I had maintained my sobriety. I did everything that I needed to do. And so I ended up winning full custody of my kids.
Awesome.
And that was
so during the COVID time, I guess they were actually in foster then. They were okay.
Yeah.
Because if they would have, I guess if they would have been with the other people, you possibly could have seen
Yeah, so that was it had become a little bit dramatic at that point, just with kind of some situations with where they were at, and everybody was really upset that I had not signed guardianship, and so they kind of had their own plan of how to like kind of transition the kids to the parents, and so they ended up having the kids get placed into a different foster home because of some decisions that they made, and so then they were kind of placed into like a more of a traditional one. And luckily, once again, they were placed with great people who really loved the kids, and so like it was a hard time, but luckily my kids they were loved and supported and all that. So.
Man, that is a powerful testimony, man. Just the meetings alone, like, I don't care if you're a drug addict or anything, you know what I mean? Like, you get into meetings and people are like, oh, this is an AA meeting. I don't want to hear about drug use or whatever. Look, meetings are good for anybody in any walk of life, not even people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol. I mean, there is so much you can gain from the meetings, you know what I mean? One thing that just stuck with me with what you said, like, what meetings teach you is learning that, look, I don't have control. You know what I mean? Because I personally, I want to move all the chess pieces. You know what I mean? And still to this day, and it drives me, that's the whole thing with God. And that faith is like, I want to control this. You know what I mean? And it's so very hard for me to think that something is bigger than me that I essentially need to just let go. You know what I mean? And I mean, man, that is crazy. Like, just this concept. And I think a lot of people are the same way. We're always trying to, I know the big book, it talks about, we always want to be the puppet masters. I don't know what chapter it is, but I remember it. We're always trying to be the puppet masters. And like I said, even without drugs or alcohol, it just the some of the stuff that I've heard in meetings just applies so much to anybody's lifestyle. And essentially, the control thing is the biggest thing, because, just realizing, because all you had to do is, make another call. I mean, and then, your life would be totally different than what it is.
100%.
And, so what was super powerful was you having this, this encounter with God, obviously, and then for you to be enough motivated by that encounter, because it had to be God, because it wasn't you. You know why? Because if it was you, you would have just picked up a drink.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Especially after sitting in 2 AA meetings where nobody ever showed up. That's 2 hours, and you took an Uber there. I mean, dude, that is so crazy, man. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm either way. I wasn't trying to cut you off. It's just, I think people, need to grasp that concept, like, letting go of essentially things that you can't control.
Yeah, and I mean, there were so many situations like that of like, and you're absolutely right. I mean, because that's one of the things is like, we admitted we were powerless, and our life had become unmanageable, and and just learning that kind of like that term surrender, and I can't tell you how many times like I was waking up to go to court to like pray and hope that I was going to get the outcome that I would want, and it would get continued. Or, they would push it out for whatever reason. And it's like, we, especially high achievers, we want to control everything, but when you're in that situation, you just realize like there's only so much you can do. And, so it was a really humbling experience, to have to go through that and really learn that. But, I mean, that's where faith came in for me, was really just turning it over and, praying on it. And, there's, the difference between faith and fear is both of them are your imagination, right? But the only difference is faith is your imagination directed, and directing it and what you're you're hoping the outcome is. And yeah, winning full custody of my kids, that was the greatest blessing of my life. And once again, just so grateful, because there was so many situations that came up to test me, and you're gonna be tested before you're blessed. I mean, that's just how it is, and even when you're making the right decisions, it doesn't matter. Like, life is gonna kick you in the nuts or punch you in the mouth, and you just got to keep moving forward. And so, after that, the business finally came back after COVID. And so, June 2021 is when our business came back and opened back up. And this was the first time I really felt like I was in like total alignment with, kind of like walking in my purpose of like who God had called me to be. And, my best year in business prior to that had been right around $250,000. And our first year after COVID was my first year crossing 7 figures, and
holy shit,
that was starting back over from nothing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was finally, like I said, didn't have any of that other shit. And I had conquered that war within, man.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that our outer world is merely a reflection of our inner world, right? And when we, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm, right? And so really winning those battles inside. And life has been truly, just truly a blessing ever since, you know what I mean? And like that promise that God made to me, everything in your life will get better if you get better, it has manifested itself. It didn't manifest itself the way that I was expecting it in the beginning, thinking it would be instant. And there was definitely a lot of like challenges and adversity that came up along the way. But now it's like, man, I get to travel the world. I get to go to these Tony Robbins events. I get to share my story. I get to, I have 2 companies now. Me and my wife started another business, CEO Sidekicks. And life.
Tell us about this stuff.
Yeah.
Like
so
what you do and
So after COVID, when we were relaunching, my wife saw she wanted to help out in the business, and so she came in and she saw me running around like the typical entrepreneur, trying to do pretty much everything myself, doing the calling and scheduling interviews, doing the interviews, running our orientations, training people, going to the field, doing sales, doing the leadership development, sending out the numbers at the end of the night, like data entry type stuff, and just saw me running around like a crazy person. And so my wife is from the Philippines, and so she was the one that actually hired our first virtual assistants in our door-to-door sales company. And it was a game changer for us. I mean, they took over pretty much our entire operational side of the business. And I realized, I was like, man, if a door-to-door sales company can benefit from virtual assistants, probably every business could. And so my wife really wanted to be able to give back to the Philippines in a meaningful way and create opportunity for the people there, because she had come from the Philippines in her 20s. And for me, I wanted to be able to help other business owners really move from being operators to being able to be owners, and experience that kind of that freedom.
So there's definitely a difference. I think a lot of people realize that. I mean, there's a difference between being self-employed and being a business owner. You know what I mean? And it's I never thought about that concept until you just said that.
I mean, and that's it. You know what I mean? But that's how we all start, right? Mean, we start as operators, but eventually, we want to grow, and we can't do everything ourselves. Eventually, we have to hire a team, and we have to find people. And so virtual assistants we got into the virtual assistant business with CEO Sidekicks. And so we help business owners, leverage virtual professionals from the Philippines, and a virtual assistant is really a virtual professional, somebody that can work remotely, but they'll do it from the Philippines, and they'll do it for a fraction of the cost in the US. But anything from administrative type stuff, social media, lead generation, they can crush that stuff. So,
no doubt.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you got this other stuff on here as well. So that's what the what was it? The D2D sales.
Yeah. Door to door. Yep.
Yeah, the door to door. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, you got, explain the whole solar thing. So like, people don't think that you're a solar company, but what you're trying to do, what you guys focus on.
Yeah. So we do third-party energy suppliers and community solar. And so what community solar is basically they build these huge solar farms. And, most people don't necessarily want to pay $50,000 to $100,000 to put panels on their roof. Some people may be renting, or they have trees that, make it to where they may not be a good candidate for solar. And so community solar is an opportunity for people to participate in renewable energy without any of the cost of actually having to put panels on their roof or anything like that. And essentially, they're able to subscribe to have their share of energy offset at a local solar farm, and they get solar credits applied onto their bill. So it gives them a guaranteed savings on their Ameren bill or their ComEd bill, anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on which program.
No doubt. And these are available, I guess, in lots of areas.
Yeah. So, definitely in Illinois, since that's where we're at. But there's tons of other states, Minnesota, Massachusetts, New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. That's because whenever you told me about that, I thought it was used as like another solar company, door to door, selling solar. But I've never heard of the community solar deals. This is the first time I ever heard of that. And I think it's a great idea, especially for people that can't afford to buy solar panels.
Yeah, and it's there's
or like
no
you
cost.
said, be wrapped into them, because I've heard so much different stuff with solar, like buying the panels. If you can't buy the whole setup outright, then it's not really worth it. Or I've just heard so many different deals, and on top of that, I know that there's a lot of companies that have essentially just saturated areas and rip people off. I mean, I was in Fairview. I did some electrical on a house up there, and 4 houses right next to each other had the solar railing on, and everything ran. And the company all them houses, they're in a lawsuit with that company now, because they never came with the panels, and they just disappeared. And so now they're battling this company which essentially probably just shut down and filed bankruptcy. And you're not going to be really able to do anything about it. I mean,
it's crazy.
I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but if I had to guess, I'm sure that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges in the rooftop solar industry with companies that have gone bankrupt. And they give these kind of promises of, like, a 20-year warranty or whatever, but 20-year warranty doesn't help if you go out of business,
Yes,
so, community solar is great because there's no cost, there's no panels, and you get a guaranteed savings on your bill, so
No
it's
doubt.
a really to me, it's a no-brainer for every single person.
So here, and I'm jumping backwards a little bit, but did your kid's mom, did she ever get right? Did she get better? Did she? I mean, is this something that like have you been able to? She been able to build a relationship, or no?
No. So, no. So after our last court date, I have never seen or heard from her again, and that's what I knew that in the beginning, right? Of like, it was all about trying to stop me from getting the kids rather than, the relationship she wanted to have with the kids. And she could have filed anything she wanted. She chose not to.
Yes, it's really a sad deal, because she's probably she went the route that you almost did.
Yeah.
You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what, because you didn't really touch on anything like that, but that it really gets me emotional, because it's the same concept with, like, I always talk about, like, I love my mom. My mom is a great person. But I think a lot of parents are already fucked up from their childhood as well. So it's, maybe you never get to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's, because that's probably essentially what happened, because I'm sure that she probably feels like shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. I don't like to speak on that.
I get it, but I'm just saying, in general,
for me, the pain that I went through, I'm like, man,
no, absolutely. I mean, hey, at least your kids have a great parent that was able to step up.
And Stephanie's
that too,
an incredible mother to them.
So how old are your kids now?
So 8, 9, and 17. So she has a 17-year-old. So
she had it. Nice.
Yep. Yeah. But we have 3 kids. So 8, 9, and 17. And they are all amazing. And yeah, I mean, it's been incredible.
Sports? Are they into sports?
We're getting them into sports. So that's yeah. So
you get any of the kids go to the gym with you or anything?
Yeah. So my son Gabriel, he comes to the gym with me pretty much every morning at 6 a.m. So I had him working out with my personal trainer for a while, and I mean, that was amazing transformation in him, because he was having some, just some typical struggles of, being a kid and going, through high school and being a little bit undisciplined and, doing the homework and things like that. And so he was struggling a little bit in school. And then after he started coming to the gym, he started getting like straight A's and B's, And so it
Really?
was like, just
That's awesome.
a huge transformation.
And this is the oldest, or this
yeah,
is okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was really cool just to kind of see that transformation in him of like his confidence rising.
Yeah.
He was really like skinny, and now he's, bulking up a little bit. And
you got him eating the same way as you?
no, not quite, know? So, I mean, I try to a little bit, but, he has a little bit more freedom. He'll eat some McDonald's and, all that stuff.
I guess so what grade is he in?
So he's a junior now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think he's going to go to college, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. But we don't really pressure. I'm a college dropout. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I know that you could be successful without college. But if you want to go to college, I support that too. And so kind of letting him, his own path. And
that's. I mean, I think that's essentially the way to go. I had dated this chick, and she had a psychology degree, and she spent like $60,000 and never even used it. It was $60,000 in debt, you know, and like just I went to school, I went to school later on in life. I actually went to school. I went back to school like 35, 36. I was the oldest in class. And actually it's probably like 34 or 35. I paid out of pocket. I was working at the steel mill and did this whole electrical thing. And that's how I ended up into electrical. But like the cost of school, like the amount of money, like you could have literally take that money and put it in something that I would have got, obviously yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think that's, the thing about today is like, especially if you know how to use your money, you could essentially, them days are dead. Like you can, as long as you got the drive and you got an idea and you got direction, a path, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I truly believe sales is the greatest skill you could probably learn in
Robert
life.
Kiyosaki. Hey, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you know who that is, you know that book. I mean, it lit a fire underneath my ass whenever I read it. But even listening to him and Grant Cardone, like, look, everybody should be a salesperson at some point in their life because it'll teach
every
you.
Business revolves around sales. There's nothing
exactly
in every conversation. I mean, even when he brings it to your family or your kids, right? You're selling your wife on where you want to go to eat. You're selling your kids on why you want them to clean their room. And you know what I mean? It's like every conversation revolves around sales. And like,
there's a lot of money in sales too. Like you said,
second highest paid profession.
What'd you say? Your second year, what?
$111,000.
You know what I mean?
At 24 years old as a college dropout with a felony on my record.
Yeah. I mean, $250,000 and then, 7 figures. I mean, but essentially anybody could do this. You 100%. Know what I mean? It's like we were talking about earlier. It's really, it doesn't matter, like you just said, it doesn't matter what you do or who, you're always selling yourself. You're building rapport, networking. Like one thing that I've learned, not just in BNI, but since I've been doing business with myself, is it's just all about numbers, dude. It's it.
It's a math problem, man. That's
I mean, hey, if I hand out my card to 10 different people today, I probably won't get a job. Maybe I do. Tomorrow I hit 20 or 30 fucking people. I guarantee you I'm going to get a call. Not to mention just having a conversation and talking to these people and, hey, look, shaking hands. This is who I am. You know what I mean? People are more prone, building that rapport, dude. It's the greatest thing ever. Cause like I told you, like I never thought I could be in sales. Like the only jobs I ever had was being a bus boy. And I hated going up and filling people's water up or asking them if they, they were done with that plate because it just made me nervous. First house that I went to do an electrical job, I was still working at the steel mill and, I'm fucking covered in tattoos and all the shit's going through my head. Yeah, it's like you said, the faith and the fear, but it was all that fear that a lot of times that fear, it doesn't even happen that way. But
false evidence appearing real, right? And man, it's so funny. Like I said, I quote Tony Robbins a lot because I go to a lot of events. But he says, the coward dies 1,000 deaths and the courageous only one. And what he means by that is like, we go through all of these situations in our head about, the worst case scenario, and 99% of the time, none of that shit ever happens or comes to fruition, but we just put ourselves through like this pain of like thinking it and experiencing it in our mind when, it's like, man, you just got to go out and do it, and like, regardless of what the outcome is, like that's that courage, right? And courage isn't the absence of fear, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has fear. We all have our own insecurities and the things that we're scared of. But the only difference is just being willing to do it afraid, and that's, you have to have fear in order to have courage, right? Because you have to go through it. When you have the fear and you do it anyways, that's courage.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sums it up. I mean, man, this has been a great podcast, dude. Honestly, this is the third podcast, but I mean, honestly, man, I could just keep on talking to you and definitely after this shit's over with, we're definitely gonna stay in touch and probably hang out. And I tell you what, why don't you tell some of these people where they can find your business, and also and what's the best advice you ever received, and what is the best advice that you could give to somebody that is essentially in that them 2 AA meetings where nobody showed up or whatever that they're going through, you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. So, people can follow me. They can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. Ryan J. Goldman is my Instagram. Ryan Goldman on Facebook. The companies are Clay Goldman Team and then CEO Sidekicks. And the best advice that I would give, and it would be just don't quit, and that seems so simple and so simplistic. But the reason I say that is because, that's where most people fail, is they just give up, and the difference between those who succeed and those who fail is the people who succeeded just didn't quit. Like you're never a failure until you quit, until you stop trying. Because every opportunity that you go through is another opportunity for you to grow, to become better, to learn something, and to try a different approach. But when you give up on yourself, that's when you're a failure. So it doesn't matter. Like I said, I could have quit. I could have given up after 2 AA meetings. And instead I was like, you know what? This meeting didn't work. Me looking at meetings on my phone obviously isn't working. Let me try a different approach and let me call somebody, and sure enough, that forced me to a different approach and I was able to find success, and same thing, like going to the gym, like you're not going to see in 3 months or 6 months, but the difference between the people that are sick and dying is they just keep showing up every single day. And like, man, I remember when I first got my gym membership, I would go and I think most people probably feel this way when they go to like a public gym, is like, they feel really insecure, especially when you're 250 pounds and fat as shit. And, like everybody else looks like they're jacked. But I knew, right, there's 2 ways to learn. And one of them is through your own experiences and the other is through the wisdom of others, right? And I've modeled my life on the wisdom of others. Like I don't want to have to go and find my own way through the minefield, right? If there's a minefield, and I have to make it to the other side, rather than me going and finding my own way, I'm going to follow the person who already made it through, right? Mm-hmm. And so I knew that, when I started going to the gym, all I have to do is just keep showing up and not quit, and the same thing in the door-to-door sales business. Like you get rejected all day long, every single day. Like most people would not think of door-to-door commission only as a fun time or something they would want to bet their life on. But I knew that there's people having success and I just had to keep showing up and my skill set would get better and I'd be able to earn more money. And so that's the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody is just don't quit, and if you're willing to hold on long enough and change your approach. It's not to say keep doing the exact same thing. Like if you're not getting the results, you got to change your approach, right? It doesn't mean you have to quit, and so if you hang on long enough, you're willing to change your approach, eventually you're going to find the success.
That's probably the best thing that after what you just said after that, because I think that essentially, that's probably something that I don't never throw out there that, that I probably should, is that, look, I'm a firm believer, like you just said, like, don't give up. That's my biggest asset. It doesn't matter what the fuck happens in my life. Yeah. I can assure you, going to keep on showing up. Hey, look, and I will not fail. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna make it to where I need to make it to. It just might take me a longer time. And hey, look, I might die doing it, but I'm going to get to that point. You know, that's why I say all the time, like, you know, even with my business, like, look, I'm part of BNI, I'm part of, you know, I'm part of other organizations and stuff like that. But these things don't make anything. Like, hey, they help me, they make me a better person. I get stuff from them, but I'm like a fucking train, dude. I'm going, you know what I mean? Like I'm not stopping, you know what I mean? You know, them setbacks, I'm going to fall over. I've been falling over in my whole life, you know what I mean? But I'm keep on getting up. It's the biggest asset. I mean, that's the most powerful thing that you could say anyways, you know? Do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Yep.
That's why I got discipline. The discipline equals freedom tattooed across my throat, you know, because just doing these things that you don't like to do get you to these places, you know what I mean? But like you said, it's important to throw that out there that, look, if you keep on doing the same shit and you're literally not going anywhere, you know what I mean? You got to change something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the, you know, and that's where I think a lot of people struggle with, right? Is like, you know, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got, right? And the key is change. And like, people will say, I did everything. I tried everything. Yeah. No, they fucking didn't. They tried 2 or 3 things that didn't work, and then they fucking gave up. You know what I mean? Because if you're committed enough, if you want it bad enough, you will find a fucking way.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's important to you, you'll make it important.
That's it.
Here goes. I got some stickers for you and a bag of coffee.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I also some hats made and some shirts.
I also got you some
man. I appreciate this, dude.
So, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and share.
Man, I like the texture of that shirt actually too, dude. Nice. Yeah, man. Now this is a logo that you created and stuff.
Yeah,
really, I like that.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, they did actually. They did. Yeah, they did. They sure did.
Hey, that's why whenever he texted me, whenever he texted me, he was like a VA, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And then I thought about it as like virtual assistant. Well, because what I learned about virtual assistants was I started going to mastermind investment groups. Because I was getting into this whole real estate thing after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because if you read the book, it's a simple read. You know what I mean? Have you read it?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have the game Cash Flow too.
Well, so yeah, I never played Cash Flow, but they were talking about playing it whenever I was going to this group. Yeah. But the way that he breaks it down between like people that build wealth and people that don't, it's so simple, dude. Look, assets. You know, like
buy assets, not liability.
Use your money as a tool instead of using it towards shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, and that's the concept is lost. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of people in this country, they're drowning themselves. And there's a lot of people that are making 6 figures that are still drowning themselves, you know, because they're too busy getting new vehicles, getting a new house, staying in debt all the fucking time instead of, you know, buying a rental property or whatever it is that would be an asset, you know?
Absolutely.
So, man, this has been a great podcast. I guess you
trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain.